Well, to go back to Abraham, when we read the Bible today, I would suggest we're reading a number of stories that have been fused to give the appearance of a single story. In the first 11 chapters of Genesis, you've got a whole sequence of stories of beginnings that have been placed alongside each other. And in their current form, they've been edited to look like it's a continuous story, with a beginning, middle, and an end. I would suggest that's not the case at all. We've got separate stories of beginnings that have simply been placed in a library together, so that you've got a story about the rehabilitation of planet Earth in Genesis 1. It's not a creation story. The planet already exists right at the beginning of that chapter. It exists before the sun, moon, and stars. So some question marks should be flying up as soon as we realize that. We're looking at a planet that's been devastated. The Hebrew phrase is tohu wa bohu. It's been devastated, destroyed, it's in chaos, and it needs rehabilitating. And the powerful ones, the Elohim, turn up and rehabilitate it. It is a flood story, one of 3 flood stories in those early chapters. 2 flood stories have been fused together in Genesis 6. You've got 2 stories about the creations of human beings. You've got a story about an upgrade of human beings. You've got a story about the separation of nations, separation of the lands, separation of the continents, a story about the destruction of a society that's about to go spacefaring, and our cosmic neighbors don't want a spacefaring planet Earth, so we get bombed back into a pre-Stone Age condition. By that point, you're in Genesis 11. And conventionally, people think that's where the stories of beginnings end. And we then get into the story of the modern world with Abraham and Sarah. I suggest in the Eden conspiracy and in the invasion of Eden that Abraham and Sarah is also a human origins story. So we're familiar with it in its current redaction as the beginning of the story of the Hebrew people and the Jewish people. However, a couple of clues that something else is going on. Abraham and Sarah, those names find a curious parallel in the Vedas of Hinduism, which talk about Brahma and Saraswati as the progenitors of the human race. Now, if you take the vowels out of Abraham and Sarah, you'll quickly realize they are the same names. Swati is a suffix that means beautiful, so you really do have Brahma and Sarah. And without the vowels, you can see it's the same name from one telling to the next. In the Hindu telling, they are the progenitors of humanity, and the Bible describes Abraham and Sarah as the progenitors of many nations. I suggest they are the progenitors of the many nations, and that we've got a story of human origins sewn in to a later story. Another little clue that this might be a much, much older narrative is when you get further on from Genesis 12, and you realize that 2 generations thereafter, you're looking at 2 different kinds of human being washing around in the text. A smooth-skinned type of person who is not as strong physically, but very wily. And then an earlier model, taller, stronger, covered in hair, so thick that the hair is indistinguishable from the skin of a goat. And the smooth-skinned person learns to manipulate the hairy kind of person through offerings of food. Now, it's told as the story of brothers, but that's not a story of brothers. That's how we tame wild animals. And it seems to me that's a recollection of a time when our smooth-skinned ancestors were working out how to become the alpha species and dominate the environment when there were more powerful hominids on the earth and other kinds of being besides. Another little clue that the stories of human origins roll further into the Bible than we might have originally thought. Now, Abraham and Sarah are not fertile because of their age, according to the story. They only produce this new line of humanity after a close encounter. with beings that when they turn up, Abraham and Sarah think they are just three people. But by the end of the story, we realize these were not just three people, these were advanced beings. Two of them move on from there to Sodom and Gomorrah, and they're clearly so beautiful, so extraordinarily attractive, that it would be like Harry Styles walking through an airport, or Justin Bieber a few years ago, and getting that kind of reaction from the people. And the evidence that they are a bit more than just attractive other people is the fact they have the power to nuke two cities just like that. So that's the Abraham and Sarah story. That's why I think we need to read it at a number of levels. Yes, it's told as the beginning of the story of the Hebrew people, but it's a human origin story that's far, far older. And in The Invasion of Eden, my latest book, I dispute the idea that they come from Lower Mesopotamia. I argue they came from ancient Armenia.